Great.
Good. Thanks for taking the time, Jeremy, and appreciate you sitting with us in Hollywood Times to talk about the work you're doing.
Sure.
So Jeremy, tell me a little bit about Everfree, because I'm familiar with Kelsey's organization, but
Sure.
I'm not as familiar with Everfree and your role in it.
Yep. Okay. So Everfree is actually about to be birthed. And I am actually the CEO of an organization called 10,000 Windows. And so the relationship between me and Kelsey, or 10,000 Windows, and Willow, is that we are coming together. We are merging to become the organization Everfree.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
it is a merger.
It's a merger that's happening, and we're going public with it in January.
Got it. So tell me a little bit about the old organization that is going to be part of that merger.
Yeah. So 10,000 Windows got its start in 2007, 2008. The organization International Justice Mission received a $5 million grant from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to reduce the prevalence of child trafficking and exploitation in Cebu, Philippines. And part of that effort, which was really focused on working with law enforcement to remove children from places of sexual exploitation, but a part of that was connecting them with service providers on the back end to help them in their recovery process. But IJM had the experience of knowing that unless they were able to provide these victims of trafficking with an opportunity to become economically self-sufficient upon their reintegration into communities, that they're likely to be re-trafficked again. And so IJM, as a part of this grant from the Gates Foundation, started a pilot project that was focused on increasing realistic and sustainable opportunities for economic self-sufficiency for trafficking survivors. And this helped, with the reintegration support. So fast forward a couple of years, after that pilot project, it was so successful that they were like, hey, we got to keep this going. This is not our core competency. And there was an entity based in the Bay Area, California, that said, hey, we're looking to take on start something or take on some work to help trafficking survivors, and we'd love to do something in Asia. And IJM said, hey, we got this great pilot project, told them about it, and they said, all right, we're in, we'll fund it, we'll get aboard. And so basically created 10,000 Windows in 2010 to carry on this work that was focused on helping survivors find economic self-sufficiency so that they're not re-trafficked. Fast forward 10 years later, we've worked with 1,000 survivors, helping them find employment. And I really think that this is meeting a need or a gap, fulfilling a gap that is in our anti-trafficking response. So much money, so much effort is understandably, trying to remove people from a situation and providing them that short-term care that they need. But what is too often neglected is providing that long-term support, so that their reintegration can be sustainable and so that they can find lasting freedom.
Very interesting. Okay, thanks for sharing all that. I got so many questions. The first one would be, why was Cebu, Philippines the chosen as the first site for your efforts?
Yeah, no, we get asked that question a whole lot. So it's not that it was unlike other places that they could have chosen. I think International Justice Mission looked at about 11 different locations, but Cebu in and of itself, there's a lot of tourism that was there. There was, a lot of sex tourists that would come in from the West to visit brothels in the Philippines. So being a tourist area, being a place of high poverty, high unemployment, they're just all of those risk factors, were jumbled up into this mix, not unlike many other places where there is poverty and lack of employment opportunities. But what IJM found was a willingness of local government officials, the police force, to
Mm.
address this issue. And so it was the right mix of like these push factors, plus there was buy-in and political will. And so it's like, hey, if we can demonstrate that we can reduce this prevalence through a holistic response, Cebu's a great place to do that.
Wonderful. Makes a lot of sense. Now, as far as the solution and creating that sustainability, as far as jobs go, like you said, can you give us a little more color and detail around what it takes, and in that, especially in that initial pilot project, to create jobs and sustainability of these jobs so they're out of the trade, and what does that success look like 12 years later?
No, it's a great question. We So prior to me coming on at 10,000 Windows, I started in 2016. I actually worked for a funding agency that was funding multiple organizations that were trying to end child trafficking. And we all knew that there was a problem. The sustainability of reintegration, it's like it's an issue. And it was built around economic self-sufficiency. Like, how do we do that? And a lot of people kind of took the approach of creating specific jobs for trafficking survivors. They would start a social enterprise. They would teach, very specific skills, sewing, baking, cooking, things that we may say are super gendered in terms of what opportunities were available. But what we did is come in and said, okay, those approaches may have a place, but often those social enterprises are heavily subsidized. Those businesses are not sustainable in and of themselves. And just as soon as a founder or someone who started that social enterprise moves on to a different stage of life or different stage of career, those things shut down, and it can only employ at best a few dozen people. And here we are, with hundreds and hundreds that are being identified and rescued. Like, where are they going to go? So there were three things that we did and have continued to do over the last 10 years that it takes a different approach. The first thing is we ask survivors themselves, what do you want in terms of services? And that sounds simple and straightforward, but it doesn't happen enough in the sector. Yeah, it's very much, here's what we have for you. And they're like, well, that's not what I need. There's tons of research out there. If you look around, that if you ask a trafficking survivor, what do they want? The number one thing they're going to say is, I need a job so I can provide for myself and provide for my family. The hands down, they're going to say. And if there's anything in terms of restorative justice or anything like that, it's like, hey, can I just get paid some back wages, some things. So it's really economic in nature. That's what they're feeling. So we asked survivors, what it is that they want. The second thing that we did is we actually went out into the business community and asked them, what are your needs? What are you looking for in entry-level positions? And we wanted to know, do we need to be prepared to teach hard skills? Or is there something else, that we need to build our program around? And we, on an annual basis, go around to different HR firms, manpower firms, and say, hey, what are people looking for, in hiring entry-level positions? And what we find consistently is they can teach the hard skills. They're looking for people who have good soft skills, so that they're, reliable. They show up on time. They know how to work with a team. They know how to manage, adversity, those types of things. So we then created a program that was not job skill specific, but was job readiness training, which was teaching soft skills. Like, hey, if you're going to succeed in any job, then these are the types of skills that you need. And I think we've seen here on research on just basic human development, child development in the West, that academic achievement is really important, but it's those soft skills that can put people over the edge.
Right.
And when you come from a more stable home, you're being taught those things, or maybe you're catching them, by from examples of the people that you're around. But we found that survivors, this was a lot of this was new to them. And we've developed a successful soft skills training program. The third thing that we did, it goes back to asking survivors what they want, is we took a career like counselor approach to our work, saying, hey, what are you interested in? Like, what do you like dream of in terms of like what your life looks like, and how that applies in your vocation and your job. And what we find consistently again is that survivors are quite shocked that people ask them what they want. There's often all these demands that are put on them, but we have people come in and they're like, oh, I can kind of dream about a future, and I'm kind of developing this relationship with you where I trust you that you can help me fulfill my dreams. And so that approach puts every one of the survivors that we work with on an individual track toward a specific career goal. Some require completing education, including some we've helped go through college. And so you fast forward 10 years, and what types of jobs do people have? Well, you have people that are, working entry-level jobs selling sunglasses in the mall. You have people that are working at KFC or Jollibee, fast food restaurants. We've got some that are working in construction industries, but we also have 43 women that have graduated college, wow. 10 of which are now social workers, helping vulnerable people like them, and who have had life's experience like they have. We have one survivor that works for JP Morgan, and in the financial industry. So these are not just jobs where people are sewing or making little trinkets, that are sold in some kind of charitable market in the West. These are real jobs, and they're sustainable. And our process teaches survivors how to find those safe employers and those good jobs. And if they're ready to move on, they can find another job. So that's why we're not just providing this one job. If it goes away, they don't know what they're going to do. We're really setting them on a different trajectory for the rest of their career.
How long is that training process? And I'm pretty sure it varies among, some who are quicker learners, but in general, how long is that training process before they're let out in the world to go find that job? And then how many women and I guess men have you guys helped all together in Cebu specifically?
Yeah, so I'm glad you mentioned men, because yes, we do help men. Yes, men are trafficked, and I think that sometimes we miss that. Yeah. That being said, 85% of the people we work with are women. 15% are men. In the Philippines, again, what we found is if an individual wants to find a job that is with a safe employer, that pays a fair wage, that provides benefits, adheres to labor laws and things like that, that a high school education is necessary. Like you got to have a high school education if you want to be considered for those types of jobs. So you asked the question about the length of our process. If someone comes in and they have a high school education already, they already have their diploma, they can be in our program, the initial training, for about 3 months. And then they're beginning to look for jobs, and we're helping them in that search. We're helping them prepare for interviews and job applications and those things. And then we're providing follow-up support for up to 2 years after they are initially employed. And it's heavier touch, early on, lighter touch toward the end of that second year. And this is the case most of the time, or majority of the time, when survivors come into the program and they haven't completed their high school education, then the process is longer, and we have a few more challenges that we have to address. Fortunately, the Philippines has a GED equivalent type of education program. We are So we provide tutoring services to help prepare individuals to take and pass that GED type of exam. Unfortunately, in the country, the pass rate is only 14%, 14 to 16%. But those that go through our program pass at a rate of 86%.
Wow.
And I think it's the social and emotional support that we provide kind of underneath the tutoring and the extra help to get them prepared. And this, this process really depends on, like, did somebody leave off after grade 5, or did they complete 8th grade and they just got a couple more years of work to do.
Mhm.
So the education support that we provide is really, I mean, it makes sense, right? But it's
Mhm.
foundational to getting somebody to be job ready.
And Jeremy, what does that support look like? I know you are kind of the head of all this, but I assume you can't be in the Philippines
No,
24/7. So
no.
I'm sure you're relying on a team. How many people are working? And then what percentage of that is Americans versus leveraging maybe some of the local help that you can get
Yeah,
in Cebu?
yeah. So it is of the utmost importance that we empower local leaders to address
Yes.
these types of problems in their areas. So these efforts that I'm talking about, the program was designed by an American, but it is implemented by Filipinos. We have 19 to 20 staff in
Hmm.
the Philippines. We are led, all but one are women, super strong leaders that are there carrying on the day-to-day efforts that we're doing. My role is, helping connect to this global anti-trafficking community, the bigger strategic piece, the board management here on the US side, and fundraising, and providing whatever support that our local leaders need. But I'll tell you that they are the heroes, they're the champions of the work that we're doing. And it's something that we place a high premium on, is that local leadership and making sure they have what they need to address these issues that are in their communities that they know best.
So, Jeremy, right now, obviously success has been shown and proven in Cebu. I'm assuming there's a lighter touch now that things are probably, the infrastructure is set up and it's kind of on autopilot. Am I correct to assume this, or wrong? And and does this allow you now to move on and maybe replicate that pilot into other places in the world and maybe in the Philippines? What is that looking like for you today in 2021?
No, that's great. We do believe that we have like a proof of concept that this
Mhm.
type of programming can work, and it's been our uh, vision all along to replicate that in other places. Again, me coming from a place where I had kind of a 30,000 foot over view of the entire sector, I know that this type of program is needed. In fact, that's why I left working for a foundation, because we were looking for something like this. And when I found this organization that was doing it, and I'm like, this is something that we need to grow and to make sustainable. So this gets to why we have chosen to merge with Willow International, is because we both share a vision to grow. We did a pilot project in 2016 through 2018 in Manila to see if we couldn't expand by opening a new office there. And we had some preliminary success, but what we found was our program was so focused on just the jobs piece that the survivors needed more holistic care, that in the Cebu, we were working with strong partnerships, other shelters and social service
Mhm.
providers that could provide those other pieces while we focused on the job readiness training and education and job placement. Didn't have those same types of relationships and networks, and it was a little bit harder for survivors to persevere through that time period of completing their education, and looking for
Right.
employment. So we learned from that if we are going to grow, we've got to have more comprehensive services around survivors. Now, not to speak for Willow, but Willow would say, "Hey, we've got this vision to grow. We've got a really good program that provides that shelter-based care and some community-based care in the short term for survivors coming out of trafficking." But they don't have the economic piece, the economic
Right.
empowerment piece, and the jobs piece. And so we realized that coming together, that we sort of round out our programs. So to answer your question, yes, we do have a vision to grow into trafficking hotspots around the world. And what continues in Cebu is the work that we're doing. We'll expand it, even within that region. But that our office in Cebu will essentially become a signature site for
Mm.
Everfree in this merge, and it will serve as a center of excellence for economic empowerment programming. And our desire is to bring um, organizations that are working with trafficking survivors all over the world to Cebu to look at this model, to learn from it,
Mhm.
and to send our staff, to these different hotspots to train other organizations in how to adopt and implement this model that we have proven in Cebu.
That's great. I'm so struck by what you just said about Manila, because actually that would be the first place that I would think
Yep.
efforts would start in what the great work you're doing. But I can totally see how the needs of the short term of getting these women out of trafficking is so much bigger of a task, where Willow needs to come in Manila. And I would assume in any major, sex tourism city like Bangkok or
Yeah.
Saigon,
Yeah.
all these places I think would be very similar to Manila in that regard. And smaller cities in Southeast Asia would be very similar to Cebu. But have you guys worked that out? You said from 2016 to 2018. So you guys did 2 years of kind of work and
Yeah.
working out the kinks. Are the kinks worked out yet? And do you have a good pilot in Manila, or is that still kind of in progress?
Still in progress. We've, the things we're talking about now we would have wanted to talk to you about in January of 2020, but COVID happened, and we
Oh,
sort of
yeah.
like went into emergency mode. All those women that we'd helped find jobs, all of a sudden we're losing jobs, and we were trying to provide emergency care. So there, a lot of this is still in progress. Yes, we can go back up to Manila. Manila presents a number of challenges. The distinction in what we did then versus what we were doing now, and I do think this is an important part of our vision. What we were doing then is like, let's create an office there. Let's hire a bunch of staff that can carry out this work. Super expensive to do. Maybe we need to do that, but we're going to help fewer people if we have to be the ones that are doing everything. So the shift in our thinking now is more about replication versus expansion. It's more about helping others that are already on the ground
Mhm.
learn to implement this type of model. And we know that there is need. We receive requests from all over the world: India, Belize, Bulgaria, Indonesia, Cambodia. Like, hey, can you come and help us do what you're doing? And that's the approach we're going to take. We think that that's cheaper, more efficient. We help more people
Mhm.
faster. And so the work that we would do in Manila would be working with providers that are already there to help them, maybe add on a piece of the economic and empowerment program. Or if they're doing shelter work, to take the things that, Willow has learned in their 10 years of work and
Mhm.
to strengthen practice there. But the reality is, anywhere where trafficking is prevalent, any trafficking hotspot in the world, there are already people there, locals, that know that there's a problem and they are working on it. And if you ask them almost to a person, they'll say two things: we need help us think through our model, help us think through building our skills to address this, and can you help with some funding? And we feel like the worst thing for us to do would be to come in, set up shop, because we've got funding here from the US, and displace those local workers. What we
Right.
want to do is come in and help build them up, because this is their community. They have the relationships. They
Mm.
know the stakeholders. They understand the problem in their area, and they just need a little bit of support. And that's the approach that we will take as Everfree moving forward.
That's great. And then what are the next hotspots you're going to target in that effort? Do you have an idea of, are you going to keep it to the Philippines or just Asia, or are you going to, because I know Kelsey's done great work in Africa.
Africa.
So is it just whoever first come, first serve type of thing? What's kind of the vision as far as scope goes?
No, that's great. So we want to, our intent is to work in places where there's high prevalence but a low uh, availability of services. So
Hmm.
our first step is to go into Belize. It's a small country, but there's
Nice.
zero aftercare shelters that are there
Wow.
to work with survivors of child trafficking. There's none there, and we have friends and colleagues from other organizations who are involved in, perhaps rescuing children at the border of Guatemala. There's nowhere for them to go, and when they take them back to the border, there are traffickers there waiting on them.
Mm.
And that situation is not acceptable. So Belize is the first place that we're going to go. We're going to work through a local organization there to help them adopt this comprehensive model that's taking both what Willow's done in Uganda, what we've done as 10,000 Windows in Cebu, and implement it in Belize. So that's the first place we're going to go. It's keeping us pretty busy right now, as you can imagine. But high prevalence, low availability of services. Those are
The most urgent case
areas.
going to take.
Yeah, that's where we're looking. And Kelsey and I have a number of relationships kind of across the world in this sector. And so knowing people and knowing, the players that are there makes sense. So I can see us that other African countries and other places in Southeast Asia are places that we're looking at right now.
Wonderful. Thanks for that preview. Now, is this information embargoed, or am I able to talk about Everfree and its plans? I just want to make sure that, if
So
I
that
do.
was a question, I came in and we're recording, and, I was like, oh, okay. I was going to ask you.
I mean, this is
What,
not
what,
live.
yeah, I know, I got it. So what I would say is, launching in January. It's a couple months. I don't know what the urgency you feel is in terms of telling this
Okay.
story,
I mean, I can
but
release this in January if you'd like.
releasing it in January would be perfect for
Okay.
us. Because again, Willow and 10,000 Windows are coming together. We will be Everfree in January, and moving
Understood.
forward, our public face is that of Everfree.
Great. So I will probably do the write-up soon while it's fresh in my mind, and I'll send it over to
Sure.
you. And then we'll
Yeah.
release it January, so that way this is current at the time, and then gives you a little
Yeah.
bit of boost.
No,
But
that's
congratulations on that. Now I wanted to ask you, Jeremy, what's your what propelled you to get in this work to start with?
yeah. Man, I was a college football player, and I came out of college coaching high school football, but cared about um, developing people and leaders, and just always had, I think,
Mm,
um, a little bit of a faith background and parents that helped me think about the oppressed and the vulnerable in the world. And 2005, I came across the issue of human trafficking, and I was in the living room of a guy that was starting a foundation that I ended up working for that addressed this issue, and watched a DVD and saw little girls being sold. And in the midst of watching, that DVD, it was on an old white iBook. I can still remember, that my little girl was coming and kind of messing with me and interrupted me. And that's just, after watching it, I'm like, I had a toddler and a baby girl, and just started thinking like, oh my gosh, this can't exist in the world. We've got to protect this innocence. And there was a little bit of naivete and probably a little bit of cowboy in me that wanted to go and, knock doors down. But this foundation was starting, and they said, "Hey, would you come and do some research for us?" I was working on a master's at the time and thinking about PhD work, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I'll do some. I need a side job," and got so caught up in it that I ended up leading a program for a family foundation. And when again, 30,000 foot view of dozens and dozens of organizations, there were two things that stood out to me. Number one is, like, if we can't help people find economic self-sufficiency, their chances of re-victimization are really high.
Mm-hmm.
And then I noticed there's a lot of small, locally led organizations that have really great work, but aren't sustainable,
Mm-hmm.
without, so a little bit of business savvy, fundraising prowess. It's, connection to the global movement. And I really cared about helping those small organizations. And we did that as a foundation. But when 10,000 Windows, came into my view, I'm like, oh my gosh, you got this small organization doing great work, helping with the economic self-sufficiency piece. Found out they were looking for someone to lead their efforts, and I jumped on it. So yeah, transition from, a dude that was playing football and coaching to doing some
Very
master's
impactful
work, and I couldn't say no to it.
I love it. Now, I'm curious, with the Gates Foundation that initially seeded some of those efforts, did that not continue? Was that just a one-time grant type of thing?
I think it was a $5 million grant over a few years.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't, again, it wasn't to 10,000 Windows. It was to IJM. I'm not sure if IJM has continued to get grants from them or not. So it was a little bit before my time here.
Got it. Yeah. And I think what you guys are doing is so much more, long-term focus and sustainable versus just, a quick infusion of cash, which is always very helpful in the beginning.
Yeah.
But there needs to be, there needs to be extra efforts to ensure that money is not wasted. So
right. So, the things that get the media attention are these big raids and, rescuing people. And I understand, why that's the case.
It's sensational. Yeah.
What's, you asked me, why am I doing this? Like, I saw that video in 2005, 2006. I go to Cambodia in 2008 to visit a organization that is running a shelter. And some of those girls that were rescued in that video were there.
Wow.
And that organization was saying, we're not sure how they were older teenagers, like, we don't know what we're going to do with them when they get back into their community.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started visiting the communities where survivors were reintegrated, and the level of poverty that was there, and lack of opportunity was just always in my face as I'm visiting and learning about these issues. And I'm like, we're sending people back into the same circumstances that they were trafficked out of. And it's not enough to just return somebody to their pre-traffic condition state. We've got to give them something better. That's slower. It's less sensational, less sexy. It's always a word I hesitate to use in this sector, but that's truly what it is. But it's the most sustainable, and just with a little bit more investment.
I love that long-term view. That's really what's needed. So I want to kind of end this on, I would like to hear your most horrifying case that you've come across, especially, in your Cebu efforts, and then end it on the happiest turnaround and the biggest success case that you can show off to the world and gives you the biggest pride. So we'll start with the bad, end with the good.
Yeah, I mean, the bad, there could be there could be so many. The thing that always struck me is, like, not so much physically what happened to women, but emotionally, where you'll have a teenage girl that is living in a province, living on an island, and her dad's sick, and they don't have enough money to take care of him. And she's got a friend of a friend that knows of a job as a hostess in Cebu. And she gets there, and it's not what she was promised. And she knows that she has to send money home, but the way that she earns money is by servicing men. And the emotional isolation that this particular woman felt, like she had no choice, she didn't know anybody, was alone and fearful of her life, fearful of her father passing away because they couldn't provide medical care for him. And yeah, just terrible that there are people in the world that would take advantage of women
Mhm.
like that. So, I think that gets me, is that emotional piece and that isolation, the fear, confusion, and all that's and just being in just a really really bad situation where she's worried about her life and she's worried about her father's life. On the flip side of it, we have a survivor that works for us, uh, who went through our program, said, I want to give back, I want to be a social worker. We helped her get through college. She got her bachelor's of social work. Now she's on staff helping people that have been in the same place that she was. So she's got an education. She's really good at what she does. And it's something that we get to see on a regular basis. This is an outcome of our work. It's also pretty funny too that when I spoke with the woman that works for JP Morgan, she goes, yeah, I talk to you Americans all the time and always solving your financial problems, for you. So, where she's come from, to be in that position, I got a good chuckle out of it, but also it's super inspiring.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for spending the time. And I actually know what angle I'm going to take this piece before, we embargo the rest of it. I think some of
Yeah.
the pieces that you mentioned here that directly affects your work in Cebu, I will mention that without talking about Everfree as a
Yeah.
new
Yeah.
organization. So,
No, I think that's great. I mean, the thing about Cebu, and I was going to say it and I got on a different track. Cebu is the epicenter of online sexual exploitation.
oh,
The
interesting.
Philippines is. So that is one of the fastest growing forms of trafficking in the world. And cyber sex trafficking is basically people being forced to do things on camera that's later broadcast out
Mhm.
to the internet. And COVID uh, has increased that risk. So we got a couple of write-ups on our website, just letting you know about
Mhm.
what that looks like and what the response has been. But that's something that we're real proud of because we really think we've helped both prevent it, by helping people find employment. So these sectors are shutting down. Our staff is like on the ground trying to find out who's hiring, so that we can get people that have lost jobs into other jobs so that they and their children aren't vulnerable
Mhm.
to predators that were out there. So yeah, if you wanted to look on the website, if you just Google 10,000 windows and
Okay.
cyber sex trafficking, there's two articles that come up.
Yeah, and do you mind if I, mention 10,000 windows because I'll center it around that versus
Yeah, if
Everfree.
you're so what I'm hearing you say is there may be two pieces.
Yes, I'm going
Yeah,
to do two
yeah. So
pieces.
the 10,000 windows piece makes total sense right now.
Mhm.
Cebu centric,
Love you.
Philippine centric, and then in January, 10,000 windows and Willow are coming together to form Everfree and to
Mhm.
expand the availability of these important programs.
Great. I'm going to keep this centered to the Philippines and all the great
Yeah.
work you're doing. So, is there anything else that we left out? Maybe you wanted to share about that because the write up will be focused on the success that you've experienced in Cebu.
I would just say that while the work has been centered there, it's been very generous Americans and oftentimes Filipino Americans that have funded this work. We have a board member whose mom is Filipino, so she's half Filipino, and it's just always inspiring to come across people that are wanting to help. You know, some will say, I want to help back home. Like, I'm here, I want to find tangible ways to help. And this work has really been enabled by that generosity.
And right now, if for the audience and for the write-up, I know in the future when this video will be released in January, it will be ever free. But for now, for my write-up, 10,000 Windows, the website, we can donate there directly.
Yep. Donate there directly. Say it's safe. You know, we're a 501c3 organization. All our financial information is there. So it's 10,000windows.org.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And that's, can we find you or the organization on social media as well? What are your links?
Yeah. Great question. 10,000 Windows. I think, yeah, we're on Facebook, Instagram. I should know.
And
this.
Is it the number 10,000 or is it?
Yeah, it's 10,000 Windows. No, it's not. What is it? Hang on. I should know this. Oh man.
It's all good.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. So
10 and then the word 1,000.
Yeah, the word 1,000 and the one Windows there in the chat. So we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, LinkedIn. You can find us there.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jeremy, for taking the time. And I'll probably catch up with you once that merger
Let's do it. Yeah.
In January. And thank you now for sharing. I know I'm going to gear this towards the Filipino American community. So we hope to get more engagement and more partnerships. And offline, I think I'll reach out to you because I got some partners you may be able to work with in the Philippines. So thank you so much for your work there and for your heart for the vulnerable, for your heart for Filipino young women that have been, put in this trade. I so appreciate everything you've done. And thank you for taking the time.
Yeah, man. Appreciate you. Thanks.
Okay. Have a nice